Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship Podcast. I am Chip Brown of Horns247, joined as always by my esteemed colleague and proud Tampa Catholic graduate, rocking his Tampa Bay Rays baseball cap because we are out of football season, into basketball season, making our way towards baseball season. Eric Henry of Horns247.com. Eric, how you doing, my man? We're fresh off the national championship game. It is, full disclosure, Tuesday morning after Indiana takes down the Miami Hurricanes for the 2025 college football national championship. Heck of a game.
Chip, good morning. Yeah, how am I doing? I'm trying to stay warm for those of you outside the Central Texas area. We're in a bit of a freeze coming up today and this week. I think, Chip, I even saw it may snow on Sunday, so I'm hoping that is not the case. It's about 40 degrees.
Did I see snow on the beach in Destin, Florida?
You know what? You may have. In the Panhandle, Chip, it occasionally, I'd say every 3-4 years, you'll get a little bit of snow if it gets cold enough. Because obviously the rain, the moisture is there. So, yeah, maybe you did, but I'm just hoping we don't see it here. But outside of that, definitely fired up for another episode of the Flagship Podcast, ready to talk all things Longhorns around the 40 acres, plenty going on, entering the football offseason, where there is no offseason at football, and of course, basketball, baseball, etc.
Football season never ends at horns247.com. That's what makes it so fun. So, make sure you're an annual subscriber. You've never had more incentive to be an annual subscriber to horns247.com. Included in your annual membership is a subscription to Paramount Plus, now known as Paramount Premium, which gets you all those great shows like Landman and also gets you the UFC. You don't have to pay the pay-per-view fees. And there's a huge fight coming up this weekend with Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett. But anyway, just a new little incentive.
I had no idea, Chip. You were such the Paramount salesman. I'm impressed.
Hey, you never know what you're going to get here on the Flagship Podcast. You never know what hidden talents are going to emerge. E. Henry. Yeah, I thought what a story. I mean, just to recap last night, Indiana, my goodness. All my Indiana graduates, friends, including Babe Laufenberg, the former Cowboys quarterback who backed up Troy Aikman back when they were good. He started at Stanford, Eric, but a guy named John Elway rolled into Stanford. So he transferred to Indiana, played for Lee Corso. And I texted him before the Miami game, and I said, unbelievable. And he said, I know that Miami Notre Dame used to be known as convicts versus Catholics. He said, but Miami better get religion because Indiana is a machine. And they ended up being a machine. Unbelievable story. Kurt Signetti in 2 years. And you know what that says about college football, Eric? It says that in this day and age, with NIL and the transfer portal and the ability for all teams to kind of remake themselves on a year-to-year basis, that it is more wide open than it's been in the past, that there is parity coming to college football. Would you agree with that? And is that a good thing or a bad thing for the University of Texas?
Yeah, Chip, before I answer that, I'll kind of piggyback off of your Babe Laufenberg story, give a quick shout out there as well. Of course, we haven't covered Conference USA. Great story at UTEP. His son who played there, who tragically passed away, they were number 2. One of the players is assigned number 2 years. If you don't know that story, go look it up. You can just Google his son, Luke Laufenberg. So I'll add that to the story. But to your question, in terms of parity, I think parity is wide open. I do agree with the hypothetical you raised with the premise. We talked a little bit off air. I think in this, Chip, this is the transfer portal of it all, to a lesser extent, the NIL of it all, or maybe depending on where you fall, I don't know if you flip those things around, right? Because I mean, obviously the transfer portal was in practice for NIL. I guess you could say maybe NIL allows for, other schools, a Texas Tech or others, to be players maybe that in a way they weren't. But you almost hesitate to use NIL in this space. This is not specifically an NIL story in talking about Indiana, right? This is we are going to invest in football in a way we haven't, and you've made the right hire. And as I said to you, Chip, I believe it was last episode of the Flagship Podcast, one of the things that makes Curt Cignetti one of the great talent evaluators, I think, in this era of college football, is he was able to find those 2-star guys that he knew could be 3 stars at JMU. And then when he went to IU, he didn't take all the JMU guys because he knew some of those guys couldn't level up, but he knew the ones that could be 3 stars, that could potentially be 4 stars and 5 stars, right? So there's that aspect of it. Bringing it around specifically to Texas. There, as I said, that Alabama era dynasty where, 1 out of every 3 years, and seemingly 1 out of every 2 years, Alabama's going to win a title, right? This to me feels like, maybe I'm using a dated reference, but this feels, Chip, I'm sure you'll appreciate this. This feels like the 2 years that Michael Jordan was playing baseball, right? And the Patrick Ewings and the Hakeem Olajuwons of the world and Barkleys and all those guys who are competing for rings who can never quite crack the Jordan ceiling, right? It's wide open. That's what this feels like to me. And I don't know how long, quote unquote, that window is going to be open, because I think there are going to be teams that are going to find a way as NIL and the transfer portal become more, I shouldn't say more because they are ingrained in college football, but as they become, just part of the structure of college football, teams will eventually settle in and find their way. And a team may rattle off 2 or 3 straight, right? But until then, with Arch Manning being on campus, with you having, I'm not going to rehash the generational talent. We've been there and done that. I'll say this. When you have a premier starting quarterback, and I don't think any of us doubt that Arch Manning is a premier starting quarterback, right? You have all the pieces in place. The infrastructure is there. Yes, I guess it's my long-winded way of saying yes, Texas. Yes, Chip. I think Texas's window to win a title is now. I think once Arch Manning leaves campus, you then are figuring out what you have at quarterback, what you have at other pieces. The time to strike is now, because in my mind, I'll pass it back to you on this. You don't know if Indiana's going to be back next year. You don't know if Miami, that was a 10 seed, if they're going to be able to build on what they had. I think it's a wide open field.
Yeah. Interesting that both teams who played for the national championship brought in transfer quarterbacks going into the 2025 season. Of course, Fernando Mendoza from Cal and Carson Beck from Georgia. Fernando Mendoza had more touchdown passes than incompletions going into the national championship game, played great, had his Heisman moment on the 4th down touchdown run. And Carson Beck, sadly enough, is leading his team down the field for what woulda, coulda, should have been the game-winning touchdown, and he throws an interception. So Georgia fans are probably saying some really snarky things right now about Carson Beck and his inability, although he did lead a incredible drive to finish off Ole Miss. But really interesting game. And for Texas, I agree with you. I mean, look, we said going into the portal window that Texas was going all in. Now, for the first 8 days of the portal window, people thought we were making that up. The last 6 days of the portal window, everyone was like, oh, okay, that's all in. Cam Coleman, Raleek Brown, Hollywood Smothers, Bo Masco, Ian Gaffrard. So, yeah, this is the time, and we'll work our way into the specifics of Texas and things like Marcus Boswell and Trevor Goosby's shoulder surgery. But Brandon Marcello of CBS Sports has put out a way too early top 25, and Ohio State is number 1 and Texas is number 2. Now, according to DraftKings, The favorite is Ohio State and Notre Dame at plus 650. Indiana is second at plus 700, and Texas is fourth, if you will, at plus 750. Eric, your thoughts on that?
I typically am not a fan of counting out the defending national champion in that realm and leaving them. When I say count them out, I mean, leaving them, I guess we have them at 4 or 5, in that range. However, they're going to lose Fernando Mendoza, right? That's a big piece. That's Heisman Trophy winner and arguably has a chance to be a top overall pick. With that being said, and I know I said in previous part of the show that we don't know if Indiana will be back. Folks, if you're going to count out Kurt Signetti, I think that train is passed, right? I mean, in terms of his ability to coach a team, his ability to find and nurture talent. Chip, feel Texas should be top 5. I don't know that I think they should be second. I think I still have questions about the offensive line. We know that's still being addressed. We'll talk about that later in the show. You still have questions about, how some of the pieces are going to fit together, although you have plenty of reason to be optimistic. Cam Coleman and Ryan Wingo, going to be a dynamic duo receiver. Plenty of reason to feel optimistic about the backfield. Plenty of reason to feel optimistic about some of the pieces on defense. But I don't know. I'm a little more comfortable with the Ohio State of it all, Chip, because of Julian Sain. And again, that's not me saying that Arch Manning is not a Julian Sain-esque quarterback. I think Arch Manning's a better quarterback, quite frankly. But I think there's less questions to be answered with Ohio State. So I would probably go Ohio State, Indiana, and have Texas somewhere in that 4 or 5 range.
Yeah, Ohio State brings a lot back. In fact, just about everyone on offense returns, including Jeremiah Smith. I mean, you lose Carnell Tate, but you've got Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sayin, and then defensively you do lose, Arvell Reese, and everybody's got some holes to fill. But I agree with you. I think Texas as a top 5 team is comfortable, but everybody's going to, just like they were blinded last year by the thought of Arch Manning as the starting quarterback. You've got a seasoned, experienced Arch Manning at quarterback, and now you've added Cam Coleman. People are going to gloss over what Texas has or has not done on the offensive line this offseason. And I do not think Texas is finished there. So, but yeah, top 5 sounds about right. I mean, the schedule is doable, but it's treacherous in that you're going to, play at Tennessee, at LSU, at A&M. And that you get a bye week after 4 games, and then you're going to play 8 straight to finish the year. And that month of November is rough because you're playing at Arkansas, at A&M. So it's going to be a difficult task, but at Texas, you're supposed to have depth and you're supposed to have, top end talent. And one thing real quick, Eric, about depth, because this is part of the new age of college football. If you're a top team that has been recruiting well year after year after year, you're not going to be able to hold on to your depth anymore. Other programs are going to come after your depth and say, you know what, we recruited that kid. We know he's good. He could start here. He's not starting at Texas. Let's put some money in front of him and see if we can get him. That happened across the board this year. It happened to Alabama. It happened to Ohio State. It happened to Texas. Texas was not unique in seeing a lot of its depth get raided and then, start to acquire talent. I mean, Texas lost 23 players. They gained 16. And that's, Texas wanted to keep Bo Barnes. They just couldn't figure it out based on what, they still had to budget for in terms of players who were still out there. So it was weird at times. You had players going into the portal, then coming out of the portal. You had players saying they didn't want to go into the portal that ended up going into the portal and leaving. Like, Jordan Washington, I think, wanted to stay. Bo Barnes wanted to stay. But Texas couldn't figure out the finances in time. And those players are like, okay, I guess you don't want me that much. Let me go over here where they want me. So that's the new age of college football. Fans are going to, old school fans my age are going to get upset and say, where's the loyalty? Where, man, I miss the days when that freshman came in and I got to see him develop and, become a senior. Those romantic days, Eric, are gone, right?
Those days are gone. I know you talked about that there a second ago. I mentioned a few weeks back that, like you said, it's one of the things I think it makes it tough for some fans to really sit with the portal, with the idea of the portal and the idea of NIL, right? Because it's, man, I remember when Texas was recruiting this kid as a sophomore and I got a chance to see his recruitment, and then he chose Texas, and then, maybe he didn't start immediately and then he developed and so on and so forth, right? Like, Chip, I use the UCF example. I won't make this a UCF podcast, but the example I use is the 2017 Knights don't really happen. The team that went undefeated and beat Auburn, right, and claimed the national title. That doesn't happen at this era because the year before, your rising talents are in the portal, right? I'll give you another one. Let's use a Texas example, and probably something we should address, right? Is Blake Gideon a Longhorn, for all 4 years? I mean, maybe, listen, Chip, Blake Gideon better than I do. So maybe he through and through would have been a Longhorn, right? I'm just using an example of someone who started as a freshman, becomes a high profile player early in their career, right? Do they stay all 4 years? Like, you don't really see that. So I'll pass it back to you on this. Something I'd love to ask Steve Sarkisian, and something I think fans should get comfortable with. Steve has said, in essence, your entire team becomes a free agent. I would love to know at the end of the year, I would love to know, and maybe he'll answer this or not, if that's literally the approach they use when trying to shape the roster. That is, hey, everyone's a free agent. Let's just assume from scratch, everyone's a free agent and we've got X amount of dollars, and then this is how we're going to go about the roster, opposed to thinking, hey, maybe we have this player back, these 10 players back. Can you even do that anymore? Or do you just have to wipe the board clean and say, I'm throwing out a number, I'm not reporting this, $40 million. How are we going to piece together this thing with the $40 million, right? Because that's seemingly where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, now other schools would hear 40 million and they'll say, Texas is blowing through the house settlement cap. And that's a whole nother story, because that's, we just had the NCAA convention and there were all kinds of presidents saying, no one's adhering to this cap and we got to put some teeth in the guidelines. But nonetheless, I would say maybe the better example from 2005 would be Earl Thomas, who redshirted. Mac Brown will probably look back at that and say, should have played him as a freshman because he only got 2 years out of him. As soon as he became draft eligible, Earl Thomas was out the door. But if we were in the portal era, I think another school would have said, oh man, they redshirted Earl Thomas. Let's go throw the bag at him, because Earl was a talented kid coming out of high school. Mac had it good for a while. Kids weren't leaving when they, Roy Williams stayed all 4 years, the all-time, career receiving yards record holder at Texas. But yeah, it's definitely a different age. And look, if you're Indiana, you can get all busted up about the transfer portal, but the transfer portal bought you Fernando Mendoza.
Right.
It brought you a bunch of dudes. So Indiana loves the transfer portal. Texas is not used to having players rated, but that, again, it happened to Alabama, it happened to Ohio State. So that's going to be part of this equation. And we've talked about this before, Eric, but you can really only spend quality money on your two deep, 44 players. So everyone's like, oh, 105 scholarships. Steve Sarkisian came right out immediately and said, I don't know if we'll ever get to 105 because you're going to need preferred walk-ons to want to come and play for nothing to get to 105. And maybe, just maybe, you get lucky and you find a player in there who develops into like a Michael Taft. But you're going to concentrate your funds on the top 44, and you better get that evaluation right. And then you're going to have to live with it and see where you are, because you can't pay everyone. That is the one line we heard over and over and over and over again during the 2-week portal window. You can't pay everyone. As guys were leaving who Texas would love to have kept, can't pay everyone. All right, Eric, you've got Trevor Gooseby suffered a shoulder injury in the Citrus Bowl. He had surgery, and he played through it, played through the pain. He also had the flu. That guy's a tough guy. That's why you're excited that Trevor Gooseby is back as your left tackle. But he's going to miss winter conditioning. He's probably going to miss some or all of spring football. And that puts Texas in an interesting position because they're already trying to figure it out on the offensive line. You're bringing in Melvin Sinai, whose name I'm probably butchering. Melvin Siani from Wake Forest, who has been their left tackle. Do you put him at left tackle in spring ball, or do you play him at right tackle where you're probably expecting him to play this upcoming season, and with Brandon Baker moving inside to right guard, and then put a guy like Jaden Chapman out at left tackle? It'll be interesting.
Chip, I would not put Melvin Ciani at left tackle. I would play him at right tackle where he's going to be. I would try to build as much continuity as possible on this offensive line, have guys in the spots we believe they're going to play them. And yes, we've heard Steve Sarkisian and Kyle Flood talk about cross training and this, that, and the other, right? I hear that, and there's obviously a benefit in that, but I would, in this case, no, I would play him at right tackle, especially. And not that Melvin Ciani hasn't played both, right? Because he has played both over his career, both at Wake Forest and at Temple. So it's not like a guy who's never been on the right side. It's like, oh, you got to learn the right side. But still, I would play him at right. I think, Chip, you talked about depth and the importance of that earlier in the show. I think this is the time. But when you have an injury to someone, right, this is the time. I'll give an example. Maybe a name that Texas fans don't ever want to hear again, but Parker Livingston, right? How many times did we hear throughout the spring last year that, hey, with Ryan Wingo being out, Parker Livingston, Day-Day McCutcheon, those guys got a chance to get valuable reps. We saw what happened, right? Regardless of whatever you think about their season, how it played out, those reps did help them get ingratiated with Arch Manning and playing more time, right? So, no, I would view this as an opportunity to have someone else step up. And then if it doesn't work out, then, and when I say it doesn't work out, I mean, if someone doesn't show enough that they're capable of doing X, Y, or Z, okay. But I that's the way I would approach it, Chip.
Yeah, I agree. Texas landed Marcus Boswell, who played as a freshman at linebacker at Akron. He's from Lake Travis. He is a legacy. His dad, Mark Boswell, was a high jumper who I covered when he was at Texas. And Marcus Boswell, to me, is Bo Barnes. Marcus Boswell played middle linebacker, played in 12 games, had a couple starts, made some plays, had an interception, had a couple of sacks, and is a guy who comes in with good size, good athletic ability. And Bo Barnes was looking like a middle linebacker. Marcus Boswell, I think, fits that mold. I expect him to be a rotational player this, in the 2026 season, kind of like Anthony Smith was as a freshman. So I think this is a good pickup for Texas.
Chip, really quick. So you see him as a rotational player. So let's just throw out some names, right? Almost at Leon LaFau. Like, man, wait a minute. My brain's got to catch up a couple weeks here, right? So you have Cryer, you have Anthony Smith, you have Tyler Atkinson,
Rasheem Biles.
You have Rasheem Biles, and of course Rasheem Biles, and then you have Boswell. So I guess that's 5 right there. You're looking at basically.
Yeah, and I think Justin Cryer is I'm not crazy. I mean, he's got experience. He doesn't blow me away. Rasheem Biles definitely blows me away. And, you can play Anthony Smith at middle linebacker. I know he's small, but he packs a punch. Rasheem Biles is a smaller, not smaller, but he's 216. He's very similar to Anthony Smith. They both came out of high school weighing right at 190 pounds. Rasheem Biles was a safety coming out of high school he plays like that. I mean, he's super fast. He can get around. I think it's going to be interesting to see what Will Muschamp settles on there, because he wants guys who are going to go crashing through that A gap and blow up whatever they see, whether it's a blocker or the ball carrier. Picture CJ Allen at Georgia. That's what Will Muschamp wants. And so, does that mean Justin Cryer who's a little bigger, a guy that he favors? I think it's going to be interesting. Tyler Atkinson is also a guy who's going to need to get in the weight room and beef up a little bit. Again, fast. And if you play fast, Eric, that's all that matters. But yeah, Texas should have lightning speed at linebacker.
Oh, sorry, Ben, was you're passing back to me. No, I would agree. Just piggyback off of your playing fast. I mean, that's naming the game on defense, right? I don't care if you played football, little league, or you played college, or whoever it may be. We've all heard the adage, hey, I don't care if you mess up, just do it fast. Do it 100 miles an hour, right? That goes back to kind of the Anthony Hill of being a freshman, right? It's like, I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I was doing it fast. I was flying 100 miles an hour. So to your point, no, as far as a player like Tyler Atkinson, we're throwing that helps. Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't want to derail the conversation too much when you talk about, and I'm going to defer to you in terms of what Will Muschamp wants to do defensively, because when I hear that about a linebacker who can just blow things up, the first place my brain goes, Chip, is like an Ian Griffard. Like, if you have a player like him who's going to be a major space eater up front, that should allow your linebackers to play extremely downhill. And a guy like Rasheem Biles, who had, if my memory serves me correct, 38 tackles for loss in 2 seasons at Pitt, to really be a force in opposing teams' backfields.
Yeah. I've said Rasheem Biles reminds me of Gary Johnson, the former Texas linebacker who played in 2018, really fast, covered ground, got in the backfield, just made plays all over the place. All right, Eric, I do think Texas is not finished in the portal. So we'll keep our eyes on that. And again, get over to horns247.com for all the latest. You ready to talk a little basketball?
Let's do it.
All right. Let's start with the women.
Yeah.
Women are the number 4 team, and they just got some big news. Aaliyah Crump, star freshman guard who was averaging 13.2 points per game through the first 5 games of the season, has returned to the floor after missing 15 games with a stress fracture in her foot, and she ends up leading Texas in scoring with 12 points. This was such a blowout win for Texas over Texas A&M. It was a 10-point game at halftime. Texas ends up winning 83-50. and just put the clamps on A&M in the second half. And, I thought Kyla Oldacre was the best player in this game. She had 10 points, 18 rebounds, 5 blocks. A&M was without one of its front court players, so Vic went after that, just tried to exploit it with Kyla. But Vic Schaefer also saying having Aaliyah Crump back allows him to play his 4-guard lineup, which would be Madison Booker, Rory Harmon, Jordan Lee, Aaliyah Crump, and Kyla Oldacre. He said, analytically, that's our best lineup. Well, he needs to play more players, in my opinion, because like Jordan Lee has lost her legs from a shooting standpoint. She's only hitting 27% of her shots from 2 the last 4 games and only 14% from 3. He's been playing her 40 minutes in these games against LSU, South Carolina. And he's got to weave Brianna Preston in there. He's got Justice Carlton is playing at a high level. Ashton Judd, the transfer, who's, been up and down. I think he has depth, Eric. And, sometimes he gets locked into his primary 5, and you look at the box at the end of a game and it's, 38 minutes, 40 minutes, 37 minutes. And then you've got like 7 minutes for Brianna Preston and, 14 minutes for Justice Carlton. And actually the box after the A&M game, when they lit the Aggies up, was the kind of box you like, because no one played more than 27 minutes. But, he's got talent. I'm not going to tell Vic how to do his job. He's got a Final Four team on his hands, but he's got talent. He's got depth.
Yeah, Chip, I was taking a look at the recent box scores for Brianna Preston. To your point, it does kind of fluctuate, right? And obviously, she getting banged up a little bit. So, of course, that probably plays a factor, but it does fluctuate. Take a look here at Missouri, at Ole Miss, 13 minutes, 8 minutes. And you come back, Auburn, LSU, 19 minutes, 21 minutes. At South Carolina, a game Texas lost, controversial fashion, but they lost 12 minutes, and then A&M 22 minutes. So it does fluctuate, right? To your point, if you look at the overall numbers, right? So I think Brianna Preston's averaging somewhere around 19 minutes a game. It may, and again, I'm not questioning Vic here either, but the overall numbers may look like, all right, you have 8, 9 players playing north of 18, 19 minutes. But I think, Chip, to your point, and you can let me know if this is what you're saying, it's in those crucial moments, right? Like against South Carolina, against LSU, right? When do you default back to, I'm going to stick with this 6-player rotation versus, it's, for lack of a better word, it's easy to play 9, 10 players against A&M, right? So I think that's what you're saying. I don't put words in your mouth, but I'd assume that's fair.
Yeah, Jordan Lee is this year's Shea Holly. I mean, she's their best defender. I should be careful because Rory Harmon is a great defender. But just from a length standpoint, Jordan Lee is, closer to 6 feet. Rory's maybe 5'7". And I know that Vic loves that. He loves having that sort of energizer player who can go 40 minutes seemingly every night. But, Shea Holly struggled with her shot late in seasons because I think she was gassed. So just a little nitpick. I mean, we're talking about the number 4 team in the country who, look, the last 2 times they played South Carolina in the state of South Carolina, they got waxed by an average of, 16 points. They went to South Carolina and they were in that game until the final seconds. And so they lost by 3, 68-65. I think Texas is in prime position to, be a Final Four team again, for sure. Maybe even, prime position to play for the national championship. You just don't want to be dead-legged. Like, they have the week off this week. They don't play again until Sunday. They're playing at Arkansas, the last place team in the SEC. Give them 3 days off, give them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off. Bring them back into the gym for Thursday, Friday, travel Saturday, do your shoot around. Like, let them get fresh. This is kind of the, what do I know? But just my instincts. This is what I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know. Eric, any thoughts on that before we move to the men?
Let's move to Sean Miller's club.
All right. So Sean Miller's club took on the Aggies, and they did not have as much success as the Texas women did against the Aggies. And this was an interesting game, Eric, because Bucky McMillan is also a first-year coach for the Aggies, and he's playing his Bucky ball. They're moving the ball, and Jamie Vinson, the former Longhorn, played 6-7 minutes in this game. But this was a winnable game, Eric. I'll let you take it from here. Texas lost the game 74-70. Your thoughts?
It was a winnable game, but it's a game that Texas, again, to use the E word, effort. It's not my phrase. It's Sean Miller's phrase. And Sean, Chip, I think he's realizing, he's a smart guy, he's a veteran coach, he's won a ton of games, realizing you can't just keep bashing the players for effort without providing some nuance, right? And maybe I shouldn't use the word bash. You can't keep calling them out for effort without providing some nuance. So in the post game, and I'm going to work backwards here, because I think it's crucial to kind of address this, to kind of provide the context of how you ended up with the final score. Sean said in the post game, they didn't come out with the right effort for the first 4 or 5 minutes of the second half. This game at halftime was tied at 29. Both teams struggled to shoot the ball. However, A&M scored, from memory serves me correct here, I want to say the first, taking a look at it here. They scored, 3, 6, 9 of the first 11 points. Quick math here. A&M. Basically, the game went from being tied 29 and a half, Chip, to at the under 16. A&M took a 44-34 lead. So that's what Sean's referring to. That really was the game right there for Texas. Again, both teams struggled to shoot the ball in the first half. Texas much more so. A&M kind of picked up a little bit the last 4 minutes of the first half. But in the second half, and when I say struggle, there was a stretch where Texas went 1 of 13 from the field, okay? The only reason that game was 29-29 all in the first half is because A&M couldn't really break out at all either, right? Rylan Griffin, I think is how it's pronounced, because it's not Griffin, it's E-N at the end for A&M. Scored all 17 of his points in the second half. Their guard hit 3 threes early on in the second half. That really was the difference. Then A&M goes cold again, Chip. The last 4 minutes of the game, or last 3:18 of the game, A&M doesn't record a field goal. They score all their points at the line, right? But Texas just couldn't find a way to close. The closest they were able to get is 3 at the end, within 3 at the end. And they ended up dropping a game that, in the immediacy, some people are saying, is it a disappointing loss or not? I don't think it's disappointing, but I think the Mississippi State game, Chip, was more disappointing than A&M. A&M's, as you said, Bucky McMillan's, they're 13-4. Okay, they're 4-1 SEC play. Mississippi State is a team that, no disrespect, to the Bulldogs, especially the fact that you had that game up 7 with, less than 2 minutes remaining in the game. That's the game you feel is more of a disappointment. I don't view this, it's disappointing because you lost to your rival, but I don't view this as, oh my gosh, some disappointment that come, NCAA tournament time, they're going to look back and be like, that's the game you should have won, right? It's disappointing because you beat 2 teams that are better than A&M previously, and you had a chance to win 3 straight games for the first time in over 3 seasons in conference play, 3 straight conference wins, right? But to flip the page, Texas heads to Kentucky. And Chip, this is a weird Kentucky team. Not really sure if Mark Pope likes them. Not really sure if they like Mark Pope. This is not just an unbeatable Kentucky team. It's Rupp Arena's Rupp Arena, and that's going to be challenging, right? But it wouldn't stun me if Texas came out, flipped a switch, similar to the way they were able to against Alabama, in Alabama, and steal one. And they need to steal one after losing to A&M, Chip. Yeah,
Kentucky 12-6, 3-2 in conference play. Texas, of course, 2-3. So this is a game. I mean, Tennessee is 2-3 as well. It's a weird year so far in the SEC. mean, Florida, the defending national champs, 4-1. But as you mentioned, A&M also 4-1. So it's early. They're going to play 16 games, and we're a third of the way through it. But yeah, and Chris Beard's, team is 3-2 in conference play. But yeah, heading to Kentucky, and I guess Eric, when you look at the fact that Texas beat Alabama at Alabama, and then followed it up by beating then number 10 Vanderbilt, and they looked connected. They looked dialed in. It looked like they had taken a step. Do you feel like they took a big step back or a little step back?
I'm going to say a little step back, just because I wish I had the entire quote in front of me from Sean, but the nuance of the effort that he's referring to, and these are his own words, is he said it wasn't effort as in guys needing to play hard, right? And I want to be clear, Chip. It sounds to me as if he knows he can't push that button so many times, because he kind of tried to couch it a little bit by saying, oh, well, effort in terms of making the right pass, making the right read, picking up the right defensive assignment. Now, again, that leads me back to the question I asked Sean. If that's the case, is that a basketball IQ thing or is that a coaching thing? And Sean did say, to be wholly conclusive, that some of the basketball nuance things were on him. He pointed at himself and said, that's on me, right? Some of the 8 points that they got off of certain turnovers, missed opportunities, that's on me. So if I'm to take Sean at his word, I'm going to say it's a minor step back. I'd say it's a major step back if the effort thing is they're just getting ran. And to be clear, why I keep saying that is, Chip, if you look at Ken Pomeroy's advanced numbers, this is the 6th most experienced team in the nation. They have 2.79 years of D1 experience, what they average. And that's why I asked Sean the question post-game, should you having to tell guys who are this experienced to come out and play hard, right? And that's when he kind of said, hey, well, it's play hard, but it's this and that and the other, right? If these guys can't come out and play for their own college basketball mortality at this point in their career as being veterans, then what do you have, right? So anyhow, I guess it's my long-winded way of answering your question, saying I'm going to say a minor step back, because I didn't see anything that made me feel like, oh man, they look like the team that's got ran. They didn't make shots, and then A&M got hot. That's the way I'm viewing this.
Yeah, it looked like in the wins over Alabama and Vanderbilt, it looked like they were getting everyone involved that they needed to be involved. And then against A&M, I thought Simeon Wilcher had one of his worst games, and he didn't turn the ball over a ton. He didn't shoot it well. He was 0 of 6, 0 of 3 from 3, but he just didn't seem in the flow. And Cam Heide got 2 shots. Again, this is a guy who's hitting over 50% from 3. They just didn't seem in the flow. And look, Bucky McMillan's team is going to try to get you out of your flow. What do you think of Kendall Weaver? Because I've thought he could be your top defender. When you need to face guard someone who's getting hot, he could be that guy. They're not going to run any offense for him, certainly. But how would you say Kendall Weaver's doing?
I'm going to touch on 2 quick things, and then I'll finish with Kendall. To your point, yeah, that was not one of Simeon Wilcher's better games. It did feel like he kind of hesitated a little bit because the shot wasn't going in. There was one specific sequence, Chip, where he passed up an open 3, kind of drove it and kicked out to Jordan Pope, who was like, okay, I'll take the pick and shoot the 3, and he buried it, right? And Jordan Pope has, the last 3 games is shooting really well. So that's 1. 2, one thing that is a little concerning is teams' inability, or I shouldn't say teams' inability, Texas's inability to really find Matis, right? And Sean talked about it, saying he wants his players to kind of learn when to get Matis the ball in the shot clock, right? Because I think that is playing a factor. He'll get to the line, right? And for the amount of times he gets to the line, I think he's still number 1 or number 2 in the nation in free throw attempts per game. You'd like to see him knock down 75%, but he's still a 7-footer, right? So the fact that he's giving you 68, 69%, it's not 50, right? So there's that, but that is gives you a little pause because you want to find ways. Chip, Rashawn Agee, 6'8", 225 for A&M. Listen, he plays much bigger than his size. He took it right to Modest Vocatitis. And I don't even necessarily think that was a byproduct of Modest playing soft, in quote soft, as much as it was Texas just couldn't get him the ball, right? Whereas they knew how to get AG the ball. So I want to add that too. Because you got it if you have a center that's 5 inches and 25 pounds bigger than the opposing center, got to make that happen. All right, to your point about Kendall, I'm going to tie this into the Cam Heide discussion. Sean said that he wasn't getting much from his 4 spot. I asked Sean what he felt he got from his 4 spot. Said that he'd have to look at the film, but he didn't feel he got much. I don't want to say that Cam Heide's struggling defensively because, again, he played for Matt Painter at Purdue. It's not like he played for someone who doesn't emphasize defense. But it's clear that there's some sort of disconnect, right, in terms of what Sean is looking for defensively and what Cam Heide's giving him, right? You can't afford, Chip, at the end of the day, to have these games where it's so up and down. Cam Heide gives you, 12 points, 15 points, and a couple threes one night, and then you get 2 points and 2 boards the next night. Is there a case to where maybe you play Kendall a little bit more, right? And I'm not saying into the starting lineup. I'm saying maybe you push Dalen Swain down to the 4, right? In those moments when you want to go with that as your lineup. Because to your point, Kendall is an excellent defender. His offensive game hasn't really evolved, right? We heard so much about the 3 that he was working on in the offseason. We saw him, even one of the fall camp, one of the training camp availabilities. We saw him after the availability just taking 53s, right? But it's clear that hasn't really translated to on the court. That's still just not his strength, right? Running offense through Kendall Weaver is never going to be a thing. And offensively, it's not really his game. It's crashing the board. It's doing those intangible things. So to kind of tie it all the way around, Cam Heide has to play. One of the things I think here's the plus and minus of if you're going to run that lineup with Kendall Weaver. The positive is you're going to get the intangible things. You're going to get the defense. You're going to get, offensive rebounding, crashing the boards. The negative, Chip, is then if you go with a lineup of, let's say, Pope, Mark, Kendall, Swain at the 4, and then Modest at the 5, it's a lot of bodies inside because that's mid-range Tremont Mark. Dalen Swain, he can shoot the 3, but it's not his go-to shot. I think he's shooting 29% for the year, right? It's a lot of bodies inside. So things get really congested. That may bog down the offense. So you have to have Cam Heide out there to stretch the floor, but you need more. So that's kind of the Cam Heide, Kendall Weaver dichotomy, the way I look at it. And maybe Nick Cody. Sean said that Nick Cody's his attitude's getting better. Maybe he's closer to playing. Maybe that's an option as well.
Well, they need Nick Cody and Declan DeRue to continue to develop because you would hope one of those two could become an impact player by the end of the season. You certainly need them to develop for the future if you think there's something there. So, all right, good stuff. Let's touch on baseball before we get to some take it or leave it. Baseball number 8 in Baseball America's preseason rankings. Eric, we touched on D1 baseball, which had Texas at in the top 3, and Baseball America has Texas at number 8. The alumni game is coming up on January 31st for those Texas baseball fans who love to get out and see all the Texas big leaguers come back and take on the current Longhorns. And someone was asking me about, okay, pitching looks good. You got arms. I mean, this looks like a team that has championship pitching. When you talk about, Dylan Volantis, Luke Harrison, they really like Jason Flores as a potential starter. Max Grubbs could be a starter. Sam Cozart, the freshman. could be a starter, and you brought in some big power arms like Cal Higgins to go along with Thomas Burns and Ruger Riojas. We can't forget about rubber-armed Ruger Riojas because he'll vie for that starting rotation as well. Okay, so you got all the pitching. And then someone asked, well, what about the hitting? I'm like, hell, you never know about the hitting. You lost a lot of clutch batting. When you talk about Ryland Galvan, Max Ballou, Kimball Schuessler, guys who had delivered for you in the clutch, and now you're looking at guys like Josh Livingston and Casey Borba maybe at first base. You got Adrian Rodriguez and Timo Becerra, the Stanford transfer, over at short and at third base, and then there's excitement about Aiden Robbins, who batted .422 at Seton Hall last year, Eric. So, I mean, baseball, it's hard to predict, but it seems pretty consensus that Texas is going to be a top 10 team going into this baseball season.
Yeah, D1 baseball has been number 3, I believe. Baseball America and another publication have them number 8. So yeah, that's pretty much the consensus, that this should be a top 10 team. Of course, the SEC, we all know, right? The SEC and the ACC, your top 2 leagues as far as baseball are concerned. But I think you touched on all the major points there. The big thing for me, right, and we'll see how this thing shapes up, is Dylan Volantis, right? I mean, you're talking about, in my mind, one of the top talents. I just kind of flippantly tweeted out and threw it on the board as well. I think if there were 3 current Longhorns on the 40 acres, you need to buy a ticket to watch. Dylan Volantis is probably in that top 3, right? So you talk about the arms. I think that the pitching is what's going to get him through. I will say this: if you remember this team last year, the hitting was so-so, right? It was great in moments. In other moments, I don't want to say disappeared, but it wasn't what Jim Schlossnagle would have liked, right? The thing is
certainly against UTSA in the postseason.
No doubt about that. The thing is this: I think this team is slowly being built in the image of a Jim Schlossnagle team. I'll never forget last year and him. It kind of caught me a little bit by surprise. Him kind of raving about Georgia, right? With Ryland Zabransky, the big 6'5", 245 first baseman who, was top 5 in the nation in home runs. That team hit a lot of home runs, Chip. I remember hearing him talk about it, and it's almost like that's the way he wants his team to be built. And Jim has said it, right? He doesn't like small guys unless he can run really fast. That's where you have an Anthony Pack, a freshman, for example. He likes big, powerful guys who can hit and big, strong guys on the mound. And he certainly has more of that this year as well.
Yeah, and I know people have been asking us about Texas softball. Texas softball is looking good. I mean, you're talking about bringing in, you've got Reese Atwood and Tegan Cavan returning, and then a name to keep an eye on is Kagan Crabtree, the freshman infielder from Melissa, Texas. I also believe she's dating Austin Gooseby, the incoming stud small forward, younger brother of Trevor Gooseby. But Kagan Crabtree, a candidate to replace Mia Scott at third base. You've got, Katie Bennett returning, Ashton Maloney returning, Adea Wallace in the outfield, Caden Henry. I mean, the softball team looks loaded, and yeah, you've got Texas Tech, trying to add to their roster. What a great showdown that was for the national championship. But Texas softball has Vivi Martinez coming back. They missed her for most of last year. They still were able to get it done. Cambria Salmon will be a year into the program as a pitcher. So, Leanne Good is still there. You've still got Citlali Gutierrez. And so, the pitching looks, really good. They're always looking for some good left-handed pitching. But, Texas softball is going to be seen as probably the preseason number one team to repeat, which is always tough. But nonetheless, lot to look forward to in the spring sports. I will throw this in, then we'll get to some take it or leave it. My wife and I went out and watched the Texas men's and women's tennis teams over the weekend. And the Texas men lost a tough one to Texas men ranked number 2, lost to number 5, Virginia. And the Texas women lost to the number 12 Texas women lost to number 21 Pepperdine in a tough one. So that both those teams are going to need time to kind of settle in. A lot of new faces, a lot of talented young new faces. So Eric, you ready for some take it or leave it?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, then don't go anywhere because we're coming right back with take it or leave it. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Flagship Podcast. Let's get to some take it or leave it. Eric, take it or leave it. Number 1, if Texas lands one more starting caliber offensive lineman out of the transfer portal, you'd give the Longhorns an A for its portal haul. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, I'll be quick. That would be an A for me. I gave them a B. So there were some people on the board who were a little upset about that, felt it should be lower than that. But I felt all things considered, Melvin Ciani is a good pickup. Now, if you can find another starting caliber player on the interior of the offensive line, left guard or center, or at least a push, I give it an A. Chip, what says you?
Yeah, I'll agree with that. A starting caliber interior offensive lineman, I'll agree with that. If they can land that player, I would give the Longhorns an A for the portal haul. Obviously, Cam Coleman, the headliner. All right, take it or leave it. Number 2.
Take it or leave it number 2. Just one quick, because I think I misunderstood Chip's question. I gave the position a B, not the portal haul a B, just to be clear. But take it or leave it number 2. You agree with CBS Sports that Texas should be the number 2 team behind Ohio State heading into the 2026 season. Take it or leave it, Chip.
We said top 5, so I'm going to leave this. I would, I think somewhere in the top 5. I don't know that number 2, but I'll leave this. What say you?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with what I said earlier in the show. I'm going to leave it. I think it's hard for me to kind of project a team that went, 10-3. A, first off there as number 2. B, I think top 5 is just a little more fitting there. I think there still are questions to be answered. We'll see how they will be answered, specifically on the offensive line. All
right, take it or leave it. Number 3, you think the Denver Longhorns will reach the Super Bowl. Of course, the Denver Longhorns were referring to the 5 members of the Denver Broncos who are Texas players: Sam Ehlinger, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Malcolm Roach, Jahdae Barron, PJ Locke, and Brandon Jones. Eric, what say you?
Yeah, Chip, I would have taken this, but there's a little thing called an injury at quarterback. So I'm leaving it. I think the New England Patriots will be the AFC representative. Chip, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to have to leave this as well. I was super impressed with Drake May, man. And I think Bo Nix, God bless him. He was playing great. So that's going to be tough to replace him. You'd either have Jarrett Stidham or Sam Ehlinger. So stay tuned. Who knows? All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Flagship Podcast. Make sure you become an annual member over at Horns247.com. Don't forget that also includes a premium subscription to Paramount Plus or Paramount Premium. For Eric Henry, I am Chip Brown. Until next time, we'll see you over at Horns247.com. Please like and subscribe to the Horns247 YouTube channel. Stay safe and keep the faith, everybody.